This call is being recorded.
Welcome to Your Daily Writing Habit. If you are writing a book or thinking about it, or maybe you've started writing a book and you need some help getting it done, you are in the right place. Good morning, everyone. I'm your host, Christine Whitmarsh. If you're looking for me online, look for Christine Inc., I-N-K, like that stuff we write with. Each day, I'm sharing with you the writing habits I've learned over my 21 years as a ghostwriter, book coach, and author. I have found that three things in particular have a huge impact on your success as an author, and they can even turn someone who barely sees themselves as a writer into a published book author. Those three things, my pillars here on the show, are writing fundamentals, productivity, and mindset habits. And here today on Your Daily Writing Habit to talk about specifically a bunch of things, but specifically about empathy for authors, really cool subject, is writer and book coach Jen Braaksma, and here's more about Jen. Jen is a writer and book coach. After 10 years as a journalist, she spent nearly 2 decades in the classroom as a high school English and writing teacher. Now she helps other writers develop and share their stories. With a focus on fiction and memoir for writers of every ability and experience level, she loves to assist in shaping stories exactly how the author wants them, from inception of the idea through revisions. Her debut YA novel, Evangeline's Heaven, comes out on August 30th, and welcome, Jen, my fellow memoir book coach and author. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Super fun. Kindred spirit here. And I was just telling you, I love the name of your book, Evangeline's Heaven, because I have a good friend. Her daughter's name is Eva Evangeline, so it reminds me of her.
I love that. I love to hear how what's been so important in my life, that name, and typing that over and over has some resonance with other people as well.
Yeah. So first, tell me about your why story. How old were you when you started writing? I know I was like 7, but how old were you when you started writing, and what made you want to do it?
Yeah, so I was all of 8, so, a year older than you, and I wrote this story. It was a Christmas story. It was about Santa and the reindeer, and I just thought it was the absolute best thing ever. And obviously, I convinced my parents because my mom typed it up for me, and so I therefore considered it published. So I became a published author at the age of 8, and I also became an award winner because my dad put a little excellent sticker on it. So I figured I was an award-winning published author at the ripe old age of 8. And then after that, it was very much sporadic. I wrote a whole bunch of short stories that, sat in a kid's drawer the way it always does. And then same thing in high school. Into university, it kind of dropped off as I was, focused on, my journalism career at the point, and then I went into teaching. All the while, I'm still kind of dabbling on the side. And then after my 2 kids were born and they were starting to get a little bit older, I thought, okay, maybe I'm going to get back to this writing thing. So even though I'd always done it kind of on the side, I really put the pedal to the metal and started to focus on the writing craft, and started working on my own, then discovered this book coach thing. I didn't even know there was such a thing. I worked with my own book coach, and that was such a revealing experience to me. It was exactly what I needed, one-on-one, as you can relate, right? Like there's so much value to that. Here's my story. How can I make this better? And so then it shifted from there. So even though I still continue to write, I got certified as a book coach through Author Accelerator, the great training program that they have for us. And then, with my teaching experience as well, I launched myself into the world as a book coach. And so that's what I'm doing now, book coaching and writing. And yeah, it's a great gig.
Yeah. Oh, book coaching. I could go on and on and on. That's like one of my number one passions in life. So yeah, really cool. And yeah, let's talk about that. As a fellow memoir and book coach, as I said about myself, I'm curious about the intersection of the space you work in, presumably your 2 passions in coaching, fiction and memoir. I mean, I, of course, see all the intersecting lines between those 2 areas, but I'd love to hear why you're passionate about coaching in those 2 areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I love narrative. I love stories where we can see this arc, this shift, this transformation in characters in fiction, or the way that an individual explains their own transformation or their own character arc in a memoir. And so those two are very, very closely related in the structure and the way that a story is told and the detail of it. So anything that's so immersive into the emotions of the characters is something that I just love to deal with and help writers bring out even more. So it's not just the what that's going on in the story, it's why it matters to them. And by seeing their stories come to life, whether it's fiction or a memoir, it's just so thrilling to see that in other writers as well.
It is, and I totally agree. That's you hit on so many of the reasons why I'm completely obsessed with memoir coaching. So it's great that you can share that, so we could have all these. That's why I love bringing different perspectives on the show, so everybody, especially all the memoir authors that I think listen to my show, they can hear all the different nuggets of wisdom. So thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one last thing about memoir too. I have a lot of clients who write memoir, and they're like, "Well, I'm not really sure if I have a story," and they may not have had the most the biggest adventure ever or anything like that. But every story that I've heard, there's so much in there that it's just amazing to me. So yeah, any memoirists out there, like there's so much value to your own story, and that's what we can do, right? As book coaches, we can help draw that out, and that's what's so exciting.
That's the best part. Yeah, when they say I get the question, who will really care about reading my story? And I'm just like, okay, there's about to be I'm going to set up an I told you so moment when you realize that, a few months into the program that I was right. So that's kind of, there's always like humor in my coaching, but it's so true though. And I've had people, like you said, big stories versus just regular everyday stories. I've had authors with like gigantic stories say that. So I think it's like a thing with all of us. Maybe it's a variation of like imposter syndrome, but I've had people with absolutely like mind-blowing stories say, who would really be interested in this? And I'm like, are you serious right now? And like a couple of them have been turned into movies. So it's just like, these are people that are just like, I don't know if anybody would really be interested. And now all of a sudden they're being turned into Hollywood movies. So obviously I was right.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the amount of courage and vulnerability that comes from writing a memoir, it's so impressive to me. It's amazing that they're wanting to and able to put themselves out there like that.
Yes. Oh, gosh, I'm in love with my author. So we could just talk memoirs for the rest of the whole year here. So I want to move on to the meat of this call, something I'm super excited about talking to you about. I understand that as a teacher of empathy, you have specifically identified how empathy is connected, and this is so cool, how it's connected to the pillars of my show. Nobody's ever done this. This is so cool. Writing fundamentals, productivity, and mindset habits. So tell us about empathy in those three areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I was first considering this, like, is there something that I can say? Empathy is always the first in my mind. I feel like it's so vital to us as writers and to anyone who's looking to put their story. But we often think of empathy only in a certain category. But if you consider writing fundamentals, okay, so we need to learn the craft of what we do. And so therefore we certainly need to get into the characters' heads. We want to know what they're thinking. We want to know what they're feeling. So in order to do that, empathy, we're putting ourselves in their shoes. We're trying to get into how they truly felt about the situation, the obstacle that you've just put in their path. So we want the reader to feel for these characters, even your secondary characters, not just your protagonists. So the more we can empathize with why they're doing what they're doing, what it is that's driving them, their motivation, we can better create whole, complex, well-rounded characters that a reader will be able to relate to. We focus on empathy for characters as one of the fundamentals of writing.
Absolutely. That's a good point.
And then, and when it comes to productivity, we want to get our story out there. And of course, that's one of the challenges that so many of us have, especially if writers have day jobs or family responsibilities or both or other, life. There's so much that happens. It's sometimes easy to push off that writing, like, okay, well, I'll get to it tomorrow, or that's at the bottom of the list, or, the kids need to be picked up from school, or dentist appointments need to be made, or whatever the case, that has to come first. But I reframed my perspective when I thought about who my ideal reader is. I try to imagine one person out there who might be moved by my story the way that other stories have moved me. When I pick up a book and I'm crying by the end of it, or I'm laughing out loud, and I'm just like, oh my God, that made my day or lifted my spirits. And, that book could change throughout, the weeks or the months or the years or whatever. And I might come at a book, differently a few years later. But the fact is that those books have moved me in some way and helped me. So what if my story can do that for someone else out there? I may not know that person, or it may be my best friend and next door neighbor, but they're waiting for that story. They don't know that they're waiting for it. And isn't that what a lot of great products are that are out there? We don't know we need them until we get them in our hands. And that's the concept, is it helps keep me motivated. Okay, I'm not sure exactly who that individual is, but I'm going to keep typing because I truly believe that my story is going to find its connection. And when I feel that sense of purpose, it's a lot easier to say, you know what, my writing time is valuable, and so therefore I'm going to make that a priority. So empathy for your reader, for that person out there who might indeed need your story at that point in their lives.
And that is such a great point. I mean, anything to get butt and share, right? And that's a really good one, to have that human connection with someone you've never met, because we see all this. We see every day on social media books that impact people, and we see just the emotional way that people rave about books. Oh my God, you need to read this book. This is amazing, or whatever. So obviously that author created that emotional connection with that person who's now, freaking out on social media and like demanding that all their friends read this book. So that's the spark that it creates. So it's really neat that if you can, form that human connection even as you're writing the book. That's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last one, mindset habits, is empathy for yourself. So again, it's reframing how you think of things. And when I first started seriously focused on, okay, I'm going to write a novel now, I'd had practice. I dabbled in writing, and, I'm an English teacher. I was teaching creative writing. I got this. And of course, it was really hard. And I thought, what am I doing wrong? Why is this so hard? Like, there are so many books out there. I can just pick one up off of my bookshelf and read it. What's wrong with me? And I learned as I was going through this process, in fact, there's nothing wrong with me. It's in fact hard. Writing is hard. And it's because I started to realize that if I have some more empathy for myself, if I don't put the expectations on that I have to write the absolute bestseller, literary icon book of the century in the first draft, then you know what, maybe it's okay. So I really I gave myself permission. People say, oh, you have to write a bad book before you write a good book. I don't even think that. A first draft is really meant to be just ideas on paper, computer, whatever. So I reframed what my first draft conventions were supposed to be. The criteria is not, is this any good? The criteria is, do I have words on paper? And as soon as I do, then great. It's a fantastic first draft, even if it's 25 drafts away from what it's going to be when it's published. So that helped take the pressure off, is that it's okay. I'm just typing some words and I can change them later. And just knowing that, it's going to be hard, and it does take time, and it can be frustrating, and it can feel isolating, and just being able to validate my own feelings and knowing, and then of course talking to other writers who are also in the same boat to remind you. And the last thing about that too, I love movies, I love TV shows. Again, it's that narrative, but in a more visual form in this case. And I sit down and I watch a TV show or I watch a movie and like, oh my God, that was great. And I don't think of the hundreds or thousands of people hours that it took to put that together, all for little old me sitting there watching this TV show. So I don't think, why should I know how to put this book together all by myself right away? So it's okay if I thought it was hard or if I come up with challenges. It doesn't mean I can't do it. And that just having empathy for myself, a little bit harder actually than having empathy for my reader or my characters, it certainly it was a game changer for me when I was able to think of it that way, and it just took the pressure off.
And that's all great, and that's so important because that's without using the word empathy in my coaching practice, I realize how much I'm talking about this because I have very kind of like type A perfectionist, very ambitious writers like myself. I think that's why. And they'll come to me on their calls and just say, "Oh, I didn't hit my word count this week," and they're beating themselves up. And I shift the conversation immediately and say, "Okay, well, let's talk about your habits," because obviously with this show, your daily writing habit, that's a very big focus in my coaching practice. And I'm just like, well, how many writing caves did you hit this week, and how did you feel about that? And let's get into the three areas that we're talking about today. How did you feel about the writing part, the productivity, and the mindset? And that's how I kind of shift it's like shifting their empathy to say, look, you actually did do a bunch of great things, especially early in the program, where they think they're just going to go from nothing to all of a sudden writing 5,000 words a week. It's just like, well, no, first we have to set the habits in place, and let's reward that as it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the one word that is the victory. And if you thought you could do more, but you can't, that doesn't negate that one word or that one sentence or that one paragraph that you did do. So we try to look at how far we've come instead of how far we still have to go.
Yes. And really, honestly, and the reason I obsess with habits is because I've seen this over and over for decades. Once you get those habits in place, the book, you'll eventually hit those writing targets. Like there's no way you won't. But without the habits, it's kind of touch and go. So yeah, it's a great combination of all the things we're talking about today. But I love the empathy angle. That was super fascinating. And of course, I want to talk about your debut novel, Evangeline's Heaven, being released on August 30th. So tell us all about that, how you got the inspiration and your writing process. And well, of course, we know your writing process now, a lot of empathy, but tell us all about Evangeline's Heaven. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a story about Lucifer's daughter who, in the battle of the heavens, before Lucifer's fall, when Lucifer is rebelling against God, and she is thinking that her father is fighting the good fight for very good reasons. And as she goes on this mission to find him, when she overhears the archangels out to get her father, she thinks she's going to save him until she starts to learn just what her father has been up to. So she'll have to decide, who is she really, her father's daughter or herself? She's 18 at this point, so she's and I have the world set in the seven heavens, but readers will see that there's certainly a lot of similarities to our earthly plane here. But it was a lot of fun to work with angel lore. In fact, my writing process started a decade ago or more when I started researching angels. I just got so fascinated with the lore, what was at first in the Bible, and then what else could be found around. I grew up in a Christian home, so that was the concept of angels was familiar to me, and I was just so curious to dive into it. And it came from my inspiration with this idea of just considering the binary of good versus evil. And it's so easy to say, the good guy, bad guy, the hero, the villain. And of course, none of us are like that. We try to be good and it doesn't always work. And so, even the evilest of characters on TV shows or movies or in books, there's some reason there. There's something more complex there. And so I was fascinated with that because Lucifer as the devil, as Satan, is the personification of that evil. I thought, well, what if somebody actually loved him? And then I got thinking about who that might be. And because I love reading young adult fiction, and I was teaching high school, and I love teaching high school students, I love the age group, I thought, maybe a teen daughter. And I have this idea of Lucifer, who is a fantastic father to her and truly loves her. And how can that be? So it's not so much Lucifer's story, how can those contradictions exist, but more about how Evangeline is starting to learn more about who her father is and then how that impacts her. If he is evil, does that make her because she loves him still? So there's a lot of questions that I think that non-angels can also relate to as they start to grow up and become more independent from their families and their parents, and they think, what's this all about? Who am I? And Evangeline's asking those same questions of herself.
Yeah, and you know what I love about this? For me, this is what makes great science fiction. And without even reading your book, I already know, because it's all built around this very, very normal, everyday, universal truth of a father-daughter relationship. And you've just built an entire world around it. And for me, that's what makes great science fiction. So I really love how you did that.
Thanks. Yeah, that's exactly, in fact, why I really do love reading science fiction and fantasy. Yes, I love the creativity of the authors in the worlds, but the ones who, really get at the heart of the character that makes us feel. And yeah, it's a real balance to try to create unique characters who are also universal characters. And that's what I was going for with Evangeline. It doesn't matter that she's an angel in these heavens. It's this idea of the way that I've created my world is that their father-daughter relationship would absolutely mimic what could happen in our own lives.
Absolutely. Those are the great books. That's what I'm always telling you, those universal truths. I talk about that a lot. And I'm sure just being the angel expert that it sounds like you are, you would be fascinated that my husband is named after he's Michael. He's named after the Archangel Michael. And I'm Christine, which means Christ-like. So you probably already have some insights into my marriage.
I love it. I think that's terrific. Yeah, absolutely. But when it comes to Michael, that's the other kind of inspiration. So the lore and the idea is that Michael was the archangel who, in fact, defeated Lucifer in this battle of the heavens, and he was the one who, on God's instructions, cast Lucifer into hell. And my original concept of this was, maybe it wasn't actually Michael. Maybe it was a female angel who never got the credit. And I played around with what that might look like, and then who that might be. And then I came up with, okay, actually, maybe Michael is indeed younger than what we might assume an archangel would be. So that's where Michael comes in as a friend of Evangeline's or enemy. We're not really sure. And just the idea as the story moves forward, someone familiar with angel lore or the Christian story of archangels, they're like, what is Michael's role in this really going to be?
That is so cool. This book has everything. It has female empowerment, father-daughter stuff, it's all kinds of things. This is great. So that was great. And so best of luck with that. And of course, I need to ask everybody this, given the theme of the show, your daily writing habit. Tell me, what is your best success habit, whether it's writing or life, or what is your very, very best success habit?
I plan in my writing time into my day. I'm a scheduler. I'm a planner. And when I left my writing until the end of all of my to-do lists, it never got done. When I insisted to my family, especially during COVID when they were all home, my husband working from home, my two girls on virtual schooling at the time, and I said, no one's coming into my home office, no one's bugging me, no one's asking me for homework help or any other questions. From this time to this time, that's my writing time, and anything else can wait. And I thought I would get pushback from them, because they did that all the time anyway, right? Mom's available, just come in.
Yeah.
And all they said was, okay, no problem. And that's what they did. And they held off all of their questions. And my husband, who is this big chatter, who loves to talk, and any break he had, he also was like, no, that's fine, we'll wait. So I planned my time in, and I let my family know what my priority was for that amount of time. And not only did they respect it, it was amazing how productive I was without any interruptions. So my habit I always plan in my writing time every day.
And that everything you just said, brilliant. And I just want to speak directly to my coaching clients, because I know they all listen to my show. Listen to what she just said about setting boundaries, creating rules, and scheduling your writing caves on your calendar and prioritizing them. So not at the end of the list, but moving other things out of the way that don't need to be there, because my coaching clients are laughing now because you just hit on so many drums that I bang on. So thank you for reinforcing that and proving to us that it works.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure, because in fact, it really does. So you're right. I say the same thing to my own clients, but I take my own medicine, and it works.
Absolutely. Well, this has been wonderful. And where is the best place or the best places on social media, the internet? Where can people learn more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, so my website, jenbraaksmawriter.com. I'm on Instagram, Jen Braaksma Book Coach, or Twitter at Jen Braaksma.
Awesome. I hope people do that. And I hope you'll connect in my Inc. Authors group on Facebook, because I love when people can connect with guests from my show. It's always a fun conversation. So we'll make sure you get that.
Yeah.
And thank you. Yeah, thank you for being on the show today, Jen. This has been great. We covered a lot of things.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you all for joining me here on Your Daily Writing Habit, where I am helping you write and finish writing an awesome book. And like I just mentioned, please drop by my Inc. Authors group on Facebook to connect with other authors like yourself. I will drop the link in the show notes as usual. Until tomorrow, happy writing.